Good morning. Welcome to everyone. As you know, this is the first of several rounds to renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement. We look forward to productive discussions over the next several months. We will now hear opening statements for this ministerial session of the negotiations. Minister Freeland will speak first, followed by Secretary Guajardo. I will speak last. Following the statements, our negotiators will move to the meeting rooms elsewhere in the facility to continue the negotiations in earnest. This round will be concluded on Sunday, at which time we will announce additional details about the next round to be held in Mexico. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you for your hospitality, and I would like to thank our American neighbors for their great hospitality here. Also, thanks for setting this up so the extreme height difference is less evident than it otherwise might have been. Okay, I'd like to start by showing everyone a set of photos. These are groups of two groups of firefighters from Mexico and the United States. They are in or on their way to BC, fighting the forest fires that are ravaging that beautiful province. I wanted to start with those photos because they are just one of the many terrific examples, large and small, that illustrate the deep friendship our countries share. It's neighborly, it's collegial. And in the case of BC, we're very grateful for the courage and commitment of those firefighters from our North American neighbors. Over the course of these negotiations, I'm going to be keeping those images and the spirit that they represent front of mind. Señoras y señores, estoy muy contenta de estar aquí presente con mis homólogos Bob Lighthizer y Ildefonso Guajardo. Quiero reconocer la importancia de estas negociaciones del Trato de Libre Comercio de América del Norte. Canadá acoge con beneplácito las modernizaciones del NAFTA para reflejar nuevas realidades y para integrar enfoques progresivos, libres y justos al comercio y a la inversión, incluso con respeto a las protecciones ambientales y laborales. Muchas gracias, amigos. Un placer trabajar. Canada is and always has been a trading nation. Our approach stems from one essential insight. We pursue trade free and fair, knowing it is not a zero-sum game. And that brings me to NAFTA and the historic project on which we are embarking together to modernize this landmark pact for the 21st century. The North American Free Trade Area is the biggest economic zone in the world. Canada, the US, and Mexico together account for a quarter of the world's GDP, with 7% of its population. According to Canadian economists, Canada's economy is 2.5% larger every year than it would otherwise be, thanks to NAFTA. In the case of the US, the Peterson Institute of International Economics estimates that NAFTA has made the US an extra $127 billion each year since the agreement was signed. Now, Canada doesn't view trade surpluses or deficits as a primary measure of whether a trading relationship works. Nonetheless, it's probably worth pointing out today that our trade with the US is balanced and mutually beneficial. In 2016, Canada and the United States traded $635.1 billion worth of goods and services. And that exchange was almost perfectly reciprocal. In fact, the United States ran a slight surplus with us of $8.1 billion. And it is worth pointing out that we are the biggest client of the United States. Canada buys more from the US than China, the UK, and Japan combined. Trade is about people. It's about creating the best possible conditions for jobs, for growth, and for prosperity. And that's why we are very committed to working hard in the coming weeks and months to modernize NAFTA. Canada's objectives are clear. We want to protect NAFTA's record as an engine of job creation and economic growth. We will work to modernize NAFTA to bring it up to date. We're going to take advantage of this opportunity to cut red tape for businesses and to harmonize regulations. We're going to work hard with our partners to make NAFTA more progressive, particularly with regard to labor, the environment, gender, and indigenous rights. And, of course, we're going to seek to uphold the existing elements in NAFTA that are key to our national interest. Le Canada est et a toujours été un pays commerçant. Notre démarche découle d'une connaissance essentielle. Nous exerçons des activités commerciales librement et équitablement, sachant qu'il ne s'agit pas d'une joue à somme nulle. Voilà qui m'amène à l'ALENA et du projet historique que nous lançons en collaboration avec nos voisins afin de moderniser cet accord historique en fonction du XXIe siècle. La zone de libre-échange nord-américaine est la plus grande zone économique du monde. Le Canada, les États-Unis et le Mexique représentent conjointement le quart du PIB mondial lorsqu'ils abritent 7% de la population mondiale. Les objectifs du Canada sont clairs. Protéger l'ALENA comme créateur d'emplois et de croissance économique, moderniser l'ALENA pour la mettre à jour, utiliser cette opportunité pour couper la paperasse pour les entreprises et harmoniser nos règles, rendre l'ALENA plus progressiste, particulièrement à ce qui a trait aux normes du travail, à l'environnement, à l'égalité des sexes et aux autochtones, et maintenir les éléments de l'ALENA qui sont dans notre intérêt national. Les relations économiques entre le Canada et les États-Unis sont les plus importantes, les plus efficaces et les plus mutuellement avantageuses du monde entier. De bonnes bases entraînent de bons résultats et c'est ce que nous obtiendrons. Canada, the United States, and Mexico have a powerful shared interest in reaching a mutually beneficial agreement. Strong economic fundamentals are a compelling argument for bolstering what works and improving what can be made better. Good fundamentals lead to good results, and that is what I'm confident we will achieve. Thank you. Merci.
Buenos días, tengan todos ustedes. Embajador Lighthizer, ministra Chrystia Freeland, quiero iniciar mis primeras palabras en español para reconocer la presencia de las delegaciones de los tres países. A los negociadores mexicanos los acompaña un grupo importante del sector privado mexicano, stakeholders de México, y sobre todo un grupo de senadores que representan a todos los partidos políticos, los más grandes partidos políticos en el Senado de la República. Creo que este va a ser un proceso transparente que nos acompañará a través de todo el proceso de negociaciones, porque hoy, sin duda, una parte importante es compartir los avances en negociaciones internacionales. Gracias a los miembros de la prensa por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Since its enforcement, NAFTA has been more than a trade agreement. It had made us think of ourselves as a region. By means of NAFTA, we advanced from only sharing the geography to shaping a common vision of North America. We have walked a long way over the 2 decades, and right now, despite our success, we have to ask ourselves if this model of integration responds to today's reality. So, here we are, once again, as we did back in 1991, face to face, willing to renew our North American partnership. The process we begin today is not about going back to the past, but is looking into the future. Mexico believes that NAFTA has been a strong success for all parties, and we also agree that there is room for modernization in order to make this agreement even more successful. The issue is not tearing apart what what it has worked, but rather how we can make our agreement work better. The issue is not tearing apart what has worked. And as Ambassador Lighthizer said in a hearing with the Ways and Means Committee just a couple of months ago, and I quote him, "Our objective is to have more trade, no less trade. And our objective is to, first of all, do no harm." End of quote. For a deal to be successful, it has to work for all parties involved. Otherwise, it's not a deal. Mexico is committed to obtain a win-win-win for all three countries. Mexico comes to this negotiation to play a constructive and proactive role, with a commitment to advance our interests and goals without risking what we have achieved as a region. From Mexico's perspective, we should look into the future by making sure that this negotiation process achieves the following objectives: strengthen North American competitiveness, advance towards a more inclusive regional trade, take advantage of the 21st century economy so we can embrace innovation and not stop innovation, and promote certainty for trade and investment in North America. 2 decades ago, we were pioneers in shaping an agreement to change the international architecture of trade. This time, we have the chance to be pioneers again, reshaping the way we interact, redefining our region, reinventing ourselves to make a positive contribution to the international trading system. Let's not be mistaken. The first challenge that we have is to find a common ground between the interests of the three countries. And that can be a difficult process, no question. But I'm convinced that the potential benefit for the US, Canada, and Mexico are worth this and any other effort we can make for the good of North America. I believe it is in the best interest of the three economies to move fast forward, taking fully into consideration the substance and the content of the negotiations. On Mexico's behalf, I'm here to once more offer my country's disposition to work seriously and constructively to take NAFTA into the 21st century, and more importantly, to build upon the original NAFTA achievements for a more prosperous North America. Thank you all.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Freeland and Secretary Guajardo, for your comments, and I would also like to thank you for coming to Washington to begin these negotiations, making the trip down here. I look forward to working together and building on what is already a strong friendship, both personally and also between our countries. I expect we'll be spending a lot of time together in the months ahead. This is an historic day for the United States. Today, for the first time, we will start negotiating to revise a major free trade agreement. American politicians have been promising to renegotiate NAFTA for years, but today, President Trump is going to fulfill those promises. I want to thank members of Congress and their staffs who have helped lay the groundwork for these negotiations. We look forward to working with them now and in the future as things proceed. I would also like to thank the members of our advisory committees and other stakeholders who have given USTR their thoughts about how this agreement can be improved. We held 3 days of hearings, and we received testimony and comments from thousands of stakeholders. Their suggestions are critical to our process, and we appreciate everyone's help. First, I know we all agree that NAFTA needs updating. It's a 23-year-old agreement, and our economies are very different than they were in the 1990s. We need to modernize or create provisions which protect digital trade and services trade, e-commerce, update customs procedures, protect intellectual property, improve energy provisions, enhance transparency rules, and promote science-based agricultural trade. In each of these areas, hopefully, we will develop model provisions that can be used for years ahead and that have the flexibility to adapt to future innovations that we can't even imagine at this point. This is an important part of our process. After modernizing, the tough work begins. We must balance the legitimate interests of literally millions of people in our countries, those of farmers and businesses and workers and, yes, families. Many Americans have benefited from NAFTA. For many of our farmers and ranchers, Canada and Mexico are their largest export markets. Americans send billions of dollars of corn and soybeans and poultry across our borders to dinner tables throughout North America. These are hardworking people with families who ask little from their government. Many are particularly vulnerable today because of low commodity prices. I've always thought that communities along our border have a particular equity in this agreement. In many cases, their lives, businesses, and families are very much on both sides of the dividing line. They too are hardworking men and women trying to raise a family and accumulate wealth. We must keep their interests paramount. But for countless Americans, this agreement has failed. We cannot ignore the huge trade deficits, the lost manufacturing jobs, the businesses that have closed or moved because of incentives, intended or not, in the current agreement. The numbers are clear. The U.S. government has certified that at least 700,000 Americans have lost their jobs due to changing trade flows resulting from NAFTA. Many people believe that the number is much, much bigger than that. In 1993, when NAFTA was approved, the United States and Mexico experienced relatively balanced trade. However, since then, we have had persistent trade deficits. In the last year, totaling nearly $57 billion. In the auto sector alone, the U.S. has a $68 billion deficit with Mexico. Thousands of American factory workers have lost their jobs because of these provisions. In recent years, we have seen some improvement in our trade balance with Canada. But over the last 10 years, our deficit in goods has exceeded $365 billion. The views of the President about NAFTA, which I completely share, are well known. I want to be clear that he is not interested in a mere tweaking of a few provisions and a couple of updated chapters. We feel that NAFTA has fundamentally failed many, many Americans and needs major improvement. Here are some of the examples of what I believe need to be changed. We need to assure that the huge trade deficits do not continue, and we have balance and reciprocity. This should be periodically reviewed. Rules of origin, particularly on autos and auto parts, must require higher NAFTA content and substantial U.S. content. Country of origin should be verified, not deemed. Labor provisions should be included in the agreement and be as strong as possible. The agreement should have effective provisions to guard against currency manipulation. The dispute settlement provisions should be designed to respect our national sovereignty and our democratic processes. We should include provisions to guard against market distorting practices of other countries, including third-party dumping and state-owned enterprises. We should assure that there is equal access and reciprocity in government procurement and agriculture. These are just a few examples of key priorities for the United States, but I think they are sufficient to show that our task is a very difficult one. On the other hand, the stakes are high for all of our citizens, and the benefits of a good agreement can be substantial. My hope is that together we will produce a result which moves us to freer markets, fairer and balanced trade, and stronger ties between our three countries. I look forward to working with Secretary Guajardo and Minister Freeland on this very important effort. Thank you very much, and now we'll get down to work.